Hey everybody, I'm back with the same setup with the webcam. Hopefully it's not too distracting. Hopefully it still looks pretty decent. Today I've got another pretty interesting one for you, and one that I just happened to kind of come across it. With the pandemic and all this stuff going on, I've been doing a lot more of just looking at like what's getting released this week. And I happened to notice this little movie called Sputnik. And I had no idea, like, what is Sputnik? It sounds like it could be a documentary about obviously Sputnik, or something to do with Russian history or something. So I kind of looked into it a little bit, and I found out it's more of a creature feature, alien monster movie. And I was like, that's kind of interesting. What is that all about? And it's actually a Russian movie, which made it even more interesting. So I thought, what the heck? It's video on demand, for a few bucks. You can check it out. I would say it's worth it. I tend to, like monster movies and horror movies. So to me, I'm a little more susceptible to that. If that's not your cup of tea, maybe wait till it's a free rental, whatever the case. But what is Sputnik? Well, there's going to be some hard names here, so I'm going to read my notes. Sputnik is a 2020 release. It's directed by Egor Noromenko. And Egor looks like he's not directed any other feature films. This is his first feature film. So in that case, I would say really promising feature debut. I could see him definitely getting a little notice from Hollywood, because this is probably a pretty small picture. It's probably not a huge budget. It feels really rich and fully realized, and I could imagine him making some big budget movies either in Hollywood or in Europe, and doing really well. Because this has got elements of kind of that low, slow burn indie drama, but it's also got some big budget kind of chops to it as far as the way it's directed. So I think it's definitely interesting. Now, you have two main characters. You have other characters, of course, as well, but you have two main characters, and that's Tatiana, who's Oksana Akinshina, and Konstantin, which is played by Pyotr Fyodorov. Oh my gosh, terrible, I know. So, the basic concept is you start out in space. You have the two cosmonauts. This is 1983, by the way. Two cosmonauts. They're up in their capsule. They're leaving the space station that's been in orbit, and they're about to come down to Earth. You don't see what happens, but something happens. You see their crashed capsule in a field, like a farmer comes up and finds it, and it looks like Konstantin's partner, cosmonaut, has violently died, and he's there on the ground. And Konstantin, crawls out of the capsule. And then cut to some different amount of time later, maybe, a week or two. It hasn't been a ton of time. And you meet Tatiana. She is up on a tribunal. She's in trouble for breaking the rules to help save this kid. She's a doctor, psychologist, and you're getting the impression really quickly that she kind of bucks the system a little bit. I mean, this is communist Russia, so you really don't buck the system. And as she's kind of up on this tribunal and this trial to see if she's going to lose her position, right after one of that trial, she gets met by this other guy. He's kind of a generally sort of dude. You don't know exactly his title, but he obviously is in some kind of a secretive paramilitary or military position. And he, offers her to come out and help with this astronaut that has survived. So she's taken off to kind of a remote institute, and the astronaut is kind of in this sealed, kind of a laboratory setting, and they are all watching them through one-way glass. And the obvious implications is that something's happened to him in some sort of an alien way, and we don't know if he's infected or if he, what exactly has happened with him. And she's there to kind of assess him. And that's kind of the crux of the story. To me, this is the kind of movie I really enjoy because, growing up on 50s and 60s sci-fi and horror, I mean, I love that kind of thing where it's like, the astronauts go up to space and they come back and they brought something with them. It's kind of one of those kind of deals. But it's taken really seriously in this, and it has some really nice and interesting twists. I could give you the basic concept, which does occur very quickly. So I'd say within 20 minutes, you know the basic idea of what has occurred to him and what is occurring to him and what they're studying. And I don't even really want to give that to you. I would say if you like a real solid, somewhat lower budget, sci-fi, creature feature, alien kind of flick, I think that you could have a lot of fun with this. It's not super action-packed, but it has some twists and turns, and it has some really good stakes, and it has really good characters, and it goes ways that you don't quite expect, and probably different than if it was an American or a Western movie. And one of the things I really appreciate about this movie is that because it takes place in Soviet Russia, there are certain decisions in this movie that are pretty illogical. And even within this world, they're somewhat illogical, and that's kind of a thing that happens in these kind of movies a lot of times, you know, that people do things, you're like, why are they doing that? You know, that's kind of the horror trope, right? And to some degree, you kind of expect that, and that's not the end of the world. But in this, it kind of works a little better, I think, than in some movies because you've got Soviet Russia. So I always think of things like, you know, Chernobyl or some of these events that would happen back in those Soviet days. They were a little loosey-goosey with, you know, safety and security of the workers. You know, they wouldn't necessarily, you know, have any trouble sending the firemen in to go try to put out the nuclear, you know, meltdown and let them just all die. So in that sense, I could kind of buy certain scenes in here where someone is put into a situation that is obviously risky and dangerous. And you're like, why would they allow that? And it's like, well, I never have thought of Soviet Russia having the highest standards when it comes to a worker safety and or security. They really are much more about like, well, what do we need to do to get the job done? So in that sense, there's an interesting kind of a dynamic that occurs in this movie that might not occur if it was in a Western version of this. The acting all across the board is really good. The effects are actually quite decent, and there is a creature at some point that you will see, and it's pretty good. I think it's mostly CGI, but it's not bad, and they keep it simple, which I think was smart. They didn't try to go too big with this, so they could allow them to have pretty decent effects for a fairly low budget movie. Once again, I would say it's pretty high quality. For me, it's in the 3.5, 4-star range. I really liked it, and I think it's really solid little sci-fi creature movie that I think can probably get some pretty good cult status because you don't get that many good movies of this type these days. So once again, right now for a rental, later it probably will be, you know, free on some streaming service, but it may be kind of hard to find because since it's Russian, it may not be as easy to sell to Western audiences unless they dub it. And this was not dubbed, it was, you know, it was subtitled. Sputnik 2020, pretty good little movie. All right, I'll be back soon with more movies.